Hey, hello, yes, welcome. It's UK Cowboys TV, Season 1, Episode 16. And yes, Sweet 16. May not be sweet because obviously Cowboys didn't come away with that sweet win. But come rain or shine, we're always here. So we've even got to do the bad. But yes, apart from the loss, guys, how are you guys this weekend?
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
Terrible.
Good.
Terrible result. and no Texas Longhorns playing at the weekend, so it was a terrible weekend.
yeah, they're on a bye, yeah.
And Ireland lost to Japan in the rugby.
Do you know something, right? That Japan game was hell of a game.
It was.
Yeah, it was a hell of a game. But the main thing is Wales won mine, so
yeah,
I've got some solace from this weekend, and my fantasy teams all won as well. But anyway, guys, yeah, as we know, the Cowboys lost this weekend in quite what can only be explained as a strange loss, really. We lost, although we never allowed a single touchdown. But there we go. These things happen sometimes. But for you guys, we're going to have a look first on the offense, because that seems to be the focal point of where it went wrong. We'll go with Graham because we haven't had you in a while. On the offense, what did you think then went wrong? Was it play calling? Was it execution? What was it for you that went wrong on the offense?
It just seemed to be a mix. We didn't get Zeke going.
Yeah.
2 fumbles killed us. Penalties. A little bit of poor refereeing. I always like to think play better than the ref. So I'm not going to dig the referees up for too much. For the past couple of weeks I've been on the show, I've been claiming that the defense will dig us out a hole, and to hold the Saints to 12 points in the Superdome, I think is pretty good.
Yeah,
it was just a shame that, I mean, a flying offense only recorded 10 points. That seemed to be the only kind of downfall. Really, really frustrating night. Just when you think things will get going, I mean, a fumble from Jason Witten, that's unheard of. He's the king of ball security, or at least he was.
I mean, he still is.
He still, of course, he is. But you know, these things happen, and we move on.
Yeah, I mean, an interesting fact I heard is if you look at Jason Witten, how many years he's played and how many fumbles he has, he fumbles once every 2 years.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is 2 years. So we're all right for the next 2 years now. So, all right, what was it for you? What did the Cowboys offense do in helping with the loss, if you like?
Like looking at it, there seemed to be just a little bit of a lethargy around them on Saturday or Sunday night. Like, I think, as Graham said, you know, the Witten fumble, it's so rare, and then it just seemed to unwind from there. Like, the Zeke fumble, that was quickly followed, I think, by Amari's first call for pass interference. I mean, I've never in my life seen a call for offensive pass interference, and 2 of them in one match.
Yeah.
And you know, I just think on the interior, the at guard and center, I think the Saints just seemed to get to us. Connor Williams had a bad game. Travis just didn't seem fully in tune for the game. And you know, like I said on the show in the pregame that the Saints were a no-name defense. Well, like, to be fair, Cam Jordan showed up, Onyemata up the middle showed up, and you know, it just the lethargy just seemed to spread from Witten out.
Yeah. So, I mean, since we're touching on the subject with the Jason Witten fumble and the Zeke fumble, how much did that actually help debilitate the offense during this game then?
Well, I think when you talk about the run game, it's all about rhythm. And things like fumbles really can throw a spanner in the works in terms of, you know, breaking down a 10-yard, you know, over, say you go 2 4-yard runs and a pass, or three-yard runs or breaks of tackle and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
To suddenly say, no, you've lost the ball and that's it, finish, go and sit down, that breaks things up. And I just think it hurts confidence as well. I mean, breaking news: the Saints are a good defense. You know, it's not a secret. And I think to go into the Superdome and to keep a crowd like that quiet, but then to go and commit to, I mean, I'm not going to get too hung up on the fumbles, but it all adds up.
Yeah,
it just seemed to get away from us in the end, and left with too little time on the clock to do anything about it. I mean, even if we got to the 35-yard line, you fancy your chances to eke out a win. I mean, they talk about it a game of inches. It really was. You know, the team that scored last was going to win that game. That's how tight it was.
So what about for you, Bri? How bad was it, those fumbles? How did it help impact the game?
Yeah, like I think, being honest, I think like the Zeke fumble, I think was his actual longest run in the game. And I mean, that was less than 10 yards from what I remember of it. Yeah. You know, and the fact that he seemed to be making yards, and I think he busted a tackle on it to get an extra bit of space.
Yeah.
You know, if you're picking up the ball and you're going for another run, you're going, okay, I've had a 6 or 7 yard run. Now I'm starting to get in, as Graham says, I'm getting into my rhythm. I can get going ahead of steam. And that just, the fact there was a fumble called was ridiculous, but it just sucked the energy. And then you're just constantly behind the chains.
Yeah. I mean, with the Zeke fumble, I mean, I still question that. I think what they've done is they just tried to cover themselves, I think, by making that call. I'm not sure if it's the right one. I've gone back and watched it a couple of times, and it's so 50-50. I'm questioning the call personally. But on a positive note, because it's not all about doom and gloom yet. So, Bri, on the offense, what went right? What were they doing that looked good for you?
I think what looked good was, again, we did have a couple of chunk plays towards the end of the game, and you know, the biggest chunk play was to Blake Jarwin, and that's great to see. I mean, on a day when our wide receivers didn't get much open, I mean, Coop was bottled up the whole game by Marshawn Lattimore, who I said was supposedly disappointing. He wasn't in this game.
I tried to tell you.
But, you know, Jarwin seemed to get free and get a bit of space, which was good, you know, because we want to see that. We want to see, you know, the next tight end really starting to play and come to the fore now. So that was good for me.
Yeah. Okay. Great. What went right for you?
I'm gonna say the passing game. Just looking at the stats just now, 5 players over 3 receptions. Spreading the ball around, you know, not having to rely on any one talent.
Yeah. I mean, when you talk about the passing game, I was talking to Bri about this before you joined us. So Dak actually had more completions, more yards, and the same amount of touchdowns and interceptions as Tom Brady this week.
Yeah.
By a long way.
But Tom Brady doesn't get slammed for his performance though. That's the indifference. Because Tom Brady's wearing Super Bowl rings, he gets a pass.
It is. That's all it is.
And like I think we also called it out, Mike, was that a certain MVP from last year also didn't have a touchdown pass last week. And you don't hear a thing about that. You know, it just seems to be that microcosm of you're the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. And we'll take every opportunity to take a shot at you. I mean, certain people in our group seem to love hating on Dak and blaming him for everything. You know, when you draw up those facts and point them out, you know, it's like it's just ridiculous.
I mean, like, you know, for me, I mean, like, the most obvious one to go for what went right is obviously it's always going to be the same thing at the moment, the third quarter. The third quarter, if we could play 4 quarters like the third quarter, you're talking like Madden level on easy there if they did that.
It seems to be our slow start that isn't helping right now.
And against a good team, a slow start is not what you want, especially on the road.
Yeah. Ideally, you want to get in there, quiet the crowd, run the ball for a bit, simmer things down, take 7 minutes off the clock and end up with a touchdown.
Totally agree. I think the offensive play calling, people keep saying about Kellen Moore, he's gone from hero to zero, like that. That didn't take long. But I don't think the play calling was bad. It seemed to be more the execution of the play calling.
First 3 weeks of the season is a genius. Fourth week he's an idiot.
Yeah. People going,
how does that work?
Back in the room, and you're like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
But let's move to the defense, shall we? So this was, a game of 2 teams, and it seemed to be the defense really stepping up their game. As I mentioned at the beginning, not a single touchdown by that Saints offense that consists of what you could call a top 5 wide receiver and a top 5 running back tied along with quite a decent O-line, not a bad O-line. And bear in mind as well, they were playing with, the guy is their backup quarterback, but bear in mind, he's a borderline, taken in the draft, he was a borderline first rounder.
Yeah. I mean, our defense showed up. When you can hold the Saints to field goals in their own stadium, if you can hold the Saints to field on short fields, some of the times, it was just a shame that we didn't have another minute 30 to go down and kick a field goal, because if you go down and kick that field goal, we're not having this same conversation. We're talking about another win. So again, comes down to inches. Our defense kept us in that game, and we knew they would. There was no doubt that they would. It just happened to be this game.
Yeah, but I mean, I think they have, what was it? Was it 5 sacks? I believe it's 5 sacks in the game and 1 interception.
That's right.
Which it happened to be Xavier who got the interception. We knew it was coming. But if we look at it, Bryce, so what went right on the defense?
I think the defense got their matchups right. They got the pressures right. We talked about this in the pregame to try and get pressure at Teddy Bridgewater. I think it was quite telling the impact that Robert Quinn had. He absolutely hounded and pressured Teddy Bridgewater into making mistakes or getting sacks at him. What he ended up with 2 sacks and a lot of pressures on him.
Bear in mind, one of those sacks actually put them out of field goal range as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And wasn't it Jalen's last one that brought them back nearly 20 yards?
Yeah.
At the end of the game, So, they did a lot right. I think the corners were decent. Byron kind of got burnt again once or twice by Thomas. Thomas is never going to burn you with speed, but by God, he's going to secure every ball. In terms of what they did right, it was the pressures. The linebackers played well. We spoke about that, and they did a good tackle count. And the secondary stepped up and got the interception, which we said they needed to get. And once again, Mystic Brian struck.
Was it Xavier? Who got that? Cheeto, that's right.
Cheeto,
as soon as I said Xavier, I was like, no, that's not right.
Yeah.
Because I think we was talking and we were like, you mentioned it in the pre-game. You were like, I can see, because I said Jordan Lewis would, but Lightning strike twice. But I mean, have you got anything to add on the defense? What they did right there, Greg?
I mean,
you already
just
mentioned.
What Ryan's saying, Smith and Van Der Esch, 17 combined tackles. 3 assists, and Smith comes up with a sack and 2 tackles for loss. Give me that every day of the week. Absolutely. Just a shame that we couldn't marry up on offense.
So, I mean, if we because we got to look at the negative here with the losses, what, if any, apart from allowing the 12 points, what did the defense do wrong?
I think it's very hard to say what they actually did wrong. I mean, they kept Alvin Kamara in check. I know we talked about this and saying there were a couple of bust tackles. Kamara only had about 65 yards on 18 carries. You know, I mean, that they kept him bottled. Yeah. Thomas didn't have a chance to get away. I mean, I know he got something close to 90 yards off, I think it was about 9 catches, but I mean, they never gave him a lot of space to get into. So it's hard to say they did anything wrong. I mean, if you do that against most teams, you're keeping them to 12 points, you're keeping them to field goals. Yeah. You know, so it's hard to say they did anything wrong. You know, a couple of interceptions might have been nice, but you know, you can't blame them for that. Like the one that they created, they took it.
Yeah. It was more of a bend and don't break. So yeah. I mean, have you got anything to add on the negative side there, Gray, with the defense?
If I'm being picky, again, just looking at their stats just now, NFL.com has them in the third quarter, 15 plays, and ended up with a field goal. Now, if you're gonna run 15 plays, could you have got them off the field? You know, could you have got them to fourth down at any point? Off the top of my head, I don't know. But like I said at the start of the show, holding the Saints to 12 points in the Superdome, you can't ask for much better than that. You really can't.
No. I mean, definitely in terms of the defense, you know, Hot Boys / the Purge. I mean, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. It was definitely, this was on the offense. I mean, the other one we got to go to, because there was a third team playing, Team Zebra. Now, they had a lot of very dubious calls, some soft ones, but I hate doing this, right? I really hate blaming the refs, because it's such a sore loser, if you like, by doing it. But we've got to go there. How bad were the refs, and how much did they help the Saints in get this win?
I think the Saints were due a break on the refs, if I'm honest.
It does swing in roundabouts.
That's exactly right. Sometimes they go for you, sometimes they don't. I mean, the Saints should have been in the Super Bowl last year. We all know it. Even the league changed the rules on it, for goodness sake. Yeah. But like I say, play better than the refs ref. That's an old Jeff Reinbold saying that. You know, just as Bill Belichick says, do your job.
I mean, there were the two particular calls for me were were very dubious. Was the two calls on Amari for pushing off. I mean, both of them to me are soft calls.
Yeah. Like, I mean, if you're going to allow hand fighting and you're going to allow a cornerback to put his hands on a wide receiver, why can a wide receiver not put his hands on as well? Like, I think if you watched it, Lattimore was handsy with him.
Yeah.
And
he just showed
nothing called, but yet when Amari seemed to just put the hands on, Lattimore seemed to take a backward step. Like, the second call was ridiculous. Lattimore just pulled himself up.
Yeah.
And sold it like it was WWE style stuff, you know.
I actually thought when they threw the flag, I thought, there we are, that's a defensive pass interference. Yeah. And you're looking at it like, yeah. And then you like the other way, you're like, what the?
Yeah.
But like, this is how bad it was, is they end up having, Cowboys end up having a penalty because Dak slid and, you know, the play comes in, defensive play, touches him while he's sliding, and they're like, yeah, unnecessary roughness. And you're like, okay. And then Jalen does the same to Bridgewater and nothing's called, and you're like, what on earth is going on?
Yeah.
Like that, it was debilitating, mainly for the Cowboys, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, have you guys got any other little tidbits you want to add into the post game?
We've kept, look, over 2 games within a year, and we said this not more than a minute ago. This was a team that should have been in the Super Bowl last year. We've kept that team to 22 points, home and away. We've kept them to 1 touchdown. We just need our offense to step up in the bigger games.
Yeah.
And, you know, it goes to show that we are a serious team, you know. I mean, whatever we might say about them having their backup quarterback in, we played them in their house. We kept their crowd quiet. We were in the game in the last minute. So let's take some positives out of this game.
If a fan of another team said to a Cowboy, right, after week 4, you're going to be 3-1, 2 divisional wins, and you're going to be beaten by 2 points from the Saints in the Superdome, you are kidding yourself on if you didn't take that.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. But as I say, we've got to move on now. Let's move on to the next one. That is, of course, how do I put this? For part 1 of this week's post-game show, that's us. We've got a little gift for you guys coming up. Just to give a quick rundown, you probably already know, we had Tyrone go out on an injury on the last play. He's had an MRI. Turns out, from all we've got news-wise, is it's not as bad as it looks. I don't know what that means. So they're just saying it's an ankle sprain, so expect him to be out, if that's the case, for 2 weeks. I would, but that's just speculation. We haven't heard anything more. The only other bad news is we do have one player that's gone on IR. That was Kayvon Frazier. He's officially IR, mainly as a special teams specialist, but we'll see what they do there. And there might be news that Michael Gallup actually plays this week. There's some news that he's recovering faster than they expected and he could be playing. But we'll get more into that on the pre-game show later this week. But for now, on the post-game show part 1, that's Brian and Graham and myself. We'll all see you again very soon.
Good night.
See you again next time.
All right, welcome back. This is part 2 of episode 16 of UK Cowboys TV. And as you can see, we have the one and only, the queen of NFL Network, Jane Slater, with us. How you doing, Jane?
I'm doing so good. I'm so flattered you guys are interested in talking Cowboys with me.
No, we can't thank you enough for joining us. So we have just got a few questions we're going to ask you. So like I said before, we won't take up too much of your time. We're going to start off with our good friend Brian, the luck of the Irish of the team. So if you want to take it away, Brian, we'll let you to ask the questions, and we'll take it from there.
Absolutely. So most of us here wouldn't be very familiar with you yourself, Jane. So we'd like to get a bit of information on you, and you know how you got into sports journalism, how you ended up covering the Cowboys. Of course, you're from Texas. You're a Longhorns fan, so you know obviously you grew up supporting the Longhorns and the Cowboys. So how did you turn that into a career?
It's such a long story, but I'll give you guys a Cliff Notes version. I graduated University of Texas in 2003, and there were really no jobs back then for women in sports. A lot of the small markets that we would start in weren't interested in hiring me to shoot and edit sports on the weekends, which is really frustrating. I feel like it's changed over here in the last probably 5 to 7 years. But I took a sales job, and 6 months later, finally got a job as a producer in Tyler, Texas. And I would work weekends putting together sports stories, hoping the sports department would run them. And one of my assignments back then in 2003 was to go drive up to Dallas, which was an hour and a half away, to cover the Cowboys. So I was covering them when it was Bill Parcells. Sean Payton was the OC. Tony Romo was third string Tony, so no one knew much about him, and it was Vinny Testaverde, and Drew. I believe it was Drew Henson even back then. So really cool to have sort of, that background. And then I did news for a long time, came back to Dallas, and then had a sports talk show in Dallas, Elfin Slater on 105.3 The Fan. And then we had a program director who didn't love the idea of women doing sports. So that show got canceled. And then I went over and worked for the local affiliate, really rebranding myself as a sports reporter then, covered the Cowboys, and then took a job at Longhorn Network covering Texas. And then left there and joined the NFL Network 4 years ago. So this is my 4th season covering the Cowboys. So I feel like I've been there for a few different chapters. I even worked with Drew Pearson at one point on a Fox Sports show. So I feel like I've gotten to sort of touch different chapters of the Cowboys. And I think that's probably why, a lot of people always ask me, are you a Cowboys fan? You seem so enthusiastic about it. Of course, I grew up in the Dallas area. So, I watched the Jimmy Johnson, Barry Switzer Super Bowls. And so there's a history, there's a context, but I think that it sort of lends itself to, just an enthusiasm for your work. When you've covered a team for as long as I have, you feel like you have just sort of this history of knowledge around them. And I also feel like it gives me a little bit of depth, and I'm able to sort of temper the hype when I see fans sort of fluctuate on overreaction Mondays. I was just telling them to just hang in there and write it out.
We're with you there. We totally agree there. Talking of hanging on, we just got a couple of questions that was asked, mainly about injuries with players. The first one is on the defensive line, Antoine Woods. Have you got any news on how he's doing or what his time frame is till he comes back?
Yeah, I'm going to be back in the locker room on Thursday. I still feel like he's probably 2 or 3 weeks out. I know he wants to get back out there, but it seems like he is still a little bit behind. We haven't gotten an update on him recently, but it's my sense that he's still probably at least 2 games away.
Okay, all right. And we had a bit of news that came out today from Jerry Jones saying that he could expect Michael Gallup to be back this week. Is that true? Or, what's the news there?
Jerry is always eternally optimistic as it pertains to injuries. He was the one who essentially said only God knows when Xavier Woods would come back. And Xavier Woods came back for the Saints game, so he was ahead of schedule. We'll have to see in practice. We typically can't really gauge that. They have a media portion is how it works, where we're essentially privy to the first 15 to 20 minutes. It's really about 10 because they stretch the beginning of the part. So we'll get an idea on Wednesday, Thursday about sort of the availability of Michael Gallup, but they could certainly use him on the outside. I think it just sort of takes some of the attention off of Amari Cooper, which is why Amari said that he was so successful early on, just having a guy like him that you really have to respect as a defense.
Yeah, definitely. You can see there was a difference there this week at the Saints. And then the last question in terms of injury is Tyrone Smith. We got a vague report over here that they gave him an MRI and it came back as good news. I don't know what that means or what any of us mean. Does that mean he's coming back this week, or are you looking at a week off? I know it's a high ankle sprain and that takes a while.
They actually pumped the brakes on that a little bit. They said it didn't look like it was as severe as a high ankle sprain. So that was sort of the breath of fresh air, the sort of silver lining. When I saw him after the game, he was on a cart. He looked dejected. So, initially my thought, and I think a lot of people's thoughts were that this was going to be a lot more serious. I think that while the timeline's sort of hard to predict right now, I think they're hopeful that it's going to be maybe 2 to 3 games, but I don't anticipate him back this weekend against the Packers. And keep in mind, what's good for this team is they have a bye week here in, what is it? Not this week, the following week they go to the Jets, and then they have a bye. That's going to be really big for their health, especially when you consider that backstretch of this schedule. When you think of going to the Patriots in Foxborough, Chicago in early December, the Philadelphia Eagles on the road, those are going to be some of their tricky ones that you're going to want a full complement of players. So I think if they can give them 2 to 3 weeks on a guy like, even if it is Michael Gallup, you get Antoine Woods. I think when you approach November, which is when we really see this team step up, that's good news for them.
Okay, so do you think Do you think Cam Fleming is up to the task? I know he's not as good, Tyrone, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been in there before. This was a guy that was a former New England Patriot. they've got a lot of confidence in. I think that's the one thing that's reassuring about that offensive line is they have so much depth. We saw that last year when Travis Frederick wasn't playing, and you saw Joe Looney have to go in. They've really been able to get a lot of flexibility. Even Connor Williams, a guy that can play guard and tackle. So that sort of gives you an insurance policy. You feel a little bit better about the situation. But when you're replacing guys like Zach Martin, Tyron Smith, Travis Frederick that are Pro Bowlers, of course you're going to see production fall off a little bit. But I think they have a lot of faith in Cam Fleming.
Yeah, definitely. I do as well. I've got my fingers crossed for him. All right, great. You got questions there for Jane?
Yeah, Jane, just again, a huge pleasure having you on the show. Thanks very much for your time. A couple of questions we get in the group a lot of the times. Dak Prescott, the talks seem to be running on and on. Is there a danger that this becomes franchise tag territory where we don't get things done?
I don't think that's the issue. I think where people are missing this is the Cowboys want to get a deal done. He wants to get a deal done. I've been told that the biggest holdup is that he wants a 4-year deal as opposed to a 6-year deal, because the Cowboys in the past they come out with the number, and then in a couple of years they want to start moving money and kicking the money down the line. If you're paying him the money up front, it's a 4-year deal. He's guaranteed that money. In other words, sometimes we see these inflated contracts and the players don't ever really see the full extent of that contract other than the guaranteed money in the first couple of years. So he has $50 million, I believe, was reported in just endorsement money, and as well as insurance money. So he's got money in the bank. He's banking on himself right now, especially when you consider what Patrick Mahomes, they've said that the market for him is looking at somewhere near $200 million, which is insane to me. He certainly is warranted that he deserves it when you look at the way that he's played in the Ravens game, you name it. But I think that his agent and Dak, which we've seen this with Dak, he is always confident in himself. He banks on himself. The Cowboys don't hate it, I'll be honest with you, because they sort of look at this as dangling the carrot in front of him, the way that they're sort of doing Jason Garrett. They gave him the 1-year deal. They did give him the extension. It's sort of a prove it deal. So the Cowboys run the risk here of, if he has this dynamic season, takes him to a Super Bowl, the amount of money they're going to have to pay. Dak runs the risk of getting hurt, possibly not seeing that money, but they're sort of playing chicken with the Cowboys in the sense that they've got an insurance policy on him. Like I said, was worth somewhere in the $50 million range, plus endorsement money. They feel okay about his situation right now.
Okay.
And we also hear a lot of good things about the Amari Cooper deal, that he's not necessarily interested in becoming the top paid wide receiver. He's just quite happy to be in the conversation. Do you expect Amari Cooper to get done closely after Dak, or is that further into the off season now?
So that one's a little bit trickier. It has nothing to do, I'm told, and I don't want to get into too much of it here because there's some stuff that, as reporters we hear, you've got to flesh out and verify. But this, I'm told, might have a little bit more to do with the situation that's going on with his management team. Not so much that he is looking to get rid of his management, but there is a situation going on behind the scenes that has less to do with the Cowboys and less to do about willingness on Amari Cooper's part, willingness on the Cowboys' part. And I think it has a little bit more to do with how they're handling this contract, who's handling it. There's some business issues that are going on behind the scene. Like I said, I hate to be as vague as I'm being with you, but we've all tried to get to the bottom of this, but it feels like, and in talking to some people, that's what's going on there. So this isn't so much a fear of paying, competition, there is just this interesting situation that's going on behind the scenes that even Stephen Jones has sort of alluded to, that we haven't exactly been able to put our finger on. But everyone that I've talked to has been able to get back to me and at least say it has nothing to do with the numbers, the want, the desire by both sides. So it's a little curious, right?
Yeah. We understand, obviously, you don't want to say on record, what it is, like you say, until it's verified,
Right. You want to be careful with what you're saying, because I have seen that, I'll say something and the next thing I know, Yahoo Sports is picking it up and this thing's gone viral. So you just never know. But the sense that we've gotten, those of us that have looked into it and have talked about this behind the scenes, we can't quite put our finger on it, but there is something else that's going on that's not necessarily desire driven or money driven.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to this week's game, or the one just been in Saints, I've just got one question for you. Do you think Zeke fumbled it?
I mean, it's tricky. You saw his elbow was down, right? So
Yeah.
there were so many like interesting calls in that game. So it's hard to say. About a lot this week. Like I said, we typically get back in the locker room and start discussing these things on Wednesday. We put the game to bed from the weekend and then get on the road. And sometimes it sort of takes digesting the game for a few days before everyone's sort of able to put it into context. We'll put it that way.
Okay. So I'm looking ahead to the Packers game then. Do you think our defense, the Hot Boys, the Purges, they call themselves, do you think our D is a good match this year for Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to say what the Packers are this year, right? Like when I look at this team, it's sort of hard to decide, who they are, what their identity is. We've heard about this Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers relationship. So it's really hard to quantify, I think. And it's even hard, I think, to just get a sense of who the Cowboys are. The biggest thing was everyone was so excited they were off to this 3-0 start. But I think I kept telling people, temper your emotions. We have to consider their first game was against the Giants and a Eli Manning team. This was before Daniel Jones. Second week, they were playing the Washington Redskins, who were just awful. I mean, they were awful on the road, and they're still self-imploding. And then you look at the Dolphins. The Dolphins were able to sort of hang in there until the half, until they were able to open it up in the third quarter, as Dak has been doing. So I think the Cowboys are sort of hard to decide what they are right now. What I will say, just psychology-wise, the mentality of that Cowboys team is so impressive. And it starts with their quarterback, Dak Prescott. He is so incredibly resilient. I saw that really when he was the fourth stringer. People forget Jamil Showers, who was once on defense, was the third string quarterback. He always had this incredible belief in himself. And even I had asked Dak last week about the comparison of Teddy Bridgewater taking over for Breeze, him taking over for Romo. Did you sympathize? Do you feel for him at all? And he essentially said, no, like, you don't think about what those guys are doing. You've got the keys to the car, whether that's for now or later. That's not for you to ask. It's what are you going to do with them now? And I just thought that was such a confident response. And then he sort of also went on to say that, I asked him, I said, Teddy Bridgewater told the locker room, thank you for accepting me. And I said, did you ever feel that way? And he sort of laughed and he said, they were going to have to accept me eventually. And if you know Dak, people would hear that at sort of face value and be like, well, that's a little cocky, but that's not who he is. He's just so confident. I actually had Blake Jarwin. I do a show on Monday nights inside the huddle. And Blake Jarwin, the tight end, who people saw really the 3 touchdowns in the Giants game, the touchdown against the Giants to open the season. He talked about that too, just how incredibly confident, resilient, and steady Dak is. That this is not a team that gets down in the dumps or questions who they are as a team. Those of us in the media might be questioning them right now. But I will tell you, playing in that dome is just another level. It is the sound as a journalist when we're in there. I was there for the Rams playoff game as well. As reporters, we have our desks sort of attached, to these walls when we're in there. And there's people below us kicking and shaking the stadium. And when we're writing, the sound is so deafening, it looks like a seismograph, the earthquakes. Right? It is unreal. And they are so loud on third downs. And even Blake said at one point, Jason Witten was sort of touching his leg, or he was touching Jason's leg because it was so loud in there. And they needed to be able to hear each other, like physical hand and touch signals, just so they were able to hear each other and listen to Dak calling out the audible. So, again, I think it's hard to say 4 games in. I think this Green Bay game is going to be fascinating. We're sort of circling it on our calendar, sort of the game of the weekend. And then I also think the other dynamic is Randall Cobb meeting up with Aaron Rodgers again. Those two didn't want to part each other. Forget Randall Cobb left the Green Bay Packers and plays for the Cowboys now. And they've really embraced him in that Cowboys locker room. But I'm sure it's going to be a little bittersweet for Randall, even playing in this game. But when I just think of some of the weapons that even Aaron Rodgers has on offense, Devontae Adams, go down the list, they're going to be a tough test, especially, like I said, for that defense this week. But they really need both phases to step up. I thought the defense did a good job against New Orleans. It was the offense that just seemed to sort of sputter. And they did such a good job of covering Amari Cooper this week. That was impressive.
I wonder if maybe perhaps some of Amari's foot issues had something to play with his lack of productivity, perhaps in the Saints game. I'm not sure how much.
I think you have to give credit to Marshawn Lattimore. I think he really just stepped up his game. So I wouldn't take anything away from Marshawn and what he did. Last year it was Michael Thomas the Cowboys shut down. They did a good job of shutting him down inside AT&T Stadium, which is sort of an anomaly and an outlier. So I just think they faced a really good team. If I know the Cowboys, they're going to step up and respond in the right way. It's just what I've come to see from that young locker room and that group of guys, again, that starts with Dak Prescott.
Yeah. Okay. So with the Packers game, right, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Did they win? And what's the score?
So as a team reporter, I always stay away from that. I feel like it gets me into tricky territory as a team reporter. So I never like to wade in those waters. But I will say in AT&T Stadium, bouncing back from a game like they did, they've got a bit of a chip on their shoulder. I would just say that the Cowboys are probably going to be, I expect them to respond in the right way, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a really good game.
Right, have you got anything left to ask?
Well, seeing as you can't give us a score prediction, give us a crazy prediction, something really odd that's going to happen in the game.
Like that.
We all reckon maybe Jeff Heath is going to get an interception.
Wouldn't that be interesting? Xavier Woods has his breakout game. Xavier Woods is just like always around the ball. This is a guy that, that has just like continued to impress this coaching staff. Maybe this is the week that he gets that big one, and off a guy like Aaron Rodgers would be huge. That would be iconic for a guy like Xavier Woods. So maybe Xavier Woods has that breakout game that we've been sort of waiting for.
Okay. Excellent. Well, as I was saying, we didn't want to take too much of your time up. We're coming up to the 20-minute mark here. So, we'll say thank you very much for joining us, Jane, this week. Thank you to, obviously, all the UK Cowboys fans as well. We speak on behalf of them. And we hope to have you again on the show, Jane, if you don't mind.
I would love to. I'm such a fan of England. Jane Slater, I hear, is a very common name there. We have very strong English roots. So anytime for you guys. I'm the biggest BBC crack addict. I watch Poldark. I watch Outlander. I love them all. So I'm gonna ask you guys to return the favor when I make my trip over there. I'm gonna actually make you guys come meet me in a pub somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. And
that's good.
You have to be warned, though. UK Cowboys is advertising. The main advertisement of us is Jaeger. So that's just a bit of a warning. Yeah.
Okay. I love it.
Yeah. So, but thank you very much, Jane. And we hope to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. Have a great day.
And you. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Jane.